From ABC News, it's This Week. Here now, Jonathan Karl.
Good morning. Welcome to This Week. For most of us, Election Day is already here. Virtually all of us live in places where you don't have to wait till November 5th to cast your ballot. More than 40 million Americans have already voted. This morning, we're going to talk about where the race stands, who's up in the polls, who's down, the tactics the candidates are using to convince undecided voters and to get their supporters to turn out. But this isn't a sporting event. This is about much more than tactics or polls. If there is one thing both sides agree on, it's that America is making a choice that will say a great deal about what kind of a nation we are and what kind of a nation we may become. 4 years ago, Donald Trump became the first president in American history to refuse to accept the results of a presidential election and to do everything in his power to try to overturn the will of the people. It was an effort that continued even after he left the White House. This time, Trump once again seems to be making it clear he won't accept the results if he loses. But he might not have to. Donald Trump has a very good chance of winning this election. He might even be, at this moment, the front runner. This even after his former chief of staff issued a stark. But precisely because the stakes are so high, let's bring in our political director and Washington bureau chief, Rick Klein, to help us understand where the race stands now. Rick?
Yeah, John, right now this race looks as close as it actually was in 2016 and 2020, which is to say it is basically a toss-up. And if you look at the 538 battleground state polling, you see some momentum for Trump in some of the key battlegrounds, but all of these numbers within a point or 2 points, well within polling margins of error. And it means we truly don't know who's going to win on election night. But as you mentioned, some 40 million Americans have already voted early. We, of course, don't know who they voted for quite yet, but far more Republicans are voting early this time than voted early last time. Donald Trump has changed his tune somewhat on that. And of course, COVID changed a lot of the patterns, so it makes comparisons difficult. But we're seeing some interesting things in the battleground states. In Georgia, turnout is already almost half of what it was in 2020. Again, with 9 days left. And check this out. Likely Republicans are actually outpacing likely Democrats in the early voting so far, a huge shift from 4 years ago. But Democrats have a lot more of their voters still on the table. They could still be out there. And in Pennsylvania, we're seeing Democrats basically doubling up on Republicans, a 2-to-1 margin. But that's down from last time as well. One Harris campaign official said, basically, this is not Republicans growing the pie as much as they're starting to eat their pie a little bit earlier. So we're seeing that kind of a shift. Bottom line is, though, we don't know what's going to happen in this race. And so many of the voters we've seen so far are basically people that vote every time. The people that are going to decide this election almost certainly haven't voted yet, John.
Now, we have our new ABC Ipsos poll this morning. It shows Kamala Harris with a slight lead, 4 points nationally. That's within the margin of error. And, of course, Rick, other polls showed it tied or with Trump leading slightly. Yeah,
51-47 is not a safe lead. In fact, it narrows even tighter if you add in third-party candidates, you add in the battleground state polls. And as you mentioned, other polling out in the last couple of days has this even, maybe Trump up a point or two, or Harris up a point or two. Trump's top issues continue to dominate so much of the conversation. We're seeing in our poll him as viewed as better equipped to handle the economy, better equipped to handle immigration and the border. But we are seeing fewer voters cite inflation as a top issue, and maybe Harris breaking through a bit on that messaging. Harris's top issues, meanwhile, include abortion rights, a big edge for her there, and protecting democracy, an 8-point edge for Harris that plays right into the candidates' closing messages. We have her a big event on Tuesday that is going to hammer that point home.
Now, one thing that caught my eye in a poll, 49% said they believe Donald Trump is a fascist. But 8% of those people say they're going to vote for him anyway.
John, you said it earlier, this is not a normal election in so many ways. We see Harris with an edge on all of these personal attributes, but if it comes down to the issues, it's a different race. John, this is as tight a race as we've seen and as unpredictable a race as I've ever covered.
All right, Rick Klein, thank you very much. Kamala Harris was joined last night in Michigan by former First Lady Michelle Obama. It was her first appearance on the campaign trail since the Democratic convention, and she once again was making her case against Donald Trump.
Can someone tell me why we are once again holding Kamala to a higher standard than her opponent? We expect her to be intelligent and articulate, to have a clear set of policies, to never show too much anger, to prove time and time again that she belongs. But for Trump, we understanding of policy, no ability to put together a coherent argument, no honesty, no decency, no morals. Instead, too many people are willing to write off his childish, mean-spirited antics by saying, well, Trump's just being Trump.
All right, let's bring in top Trump ally, Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina. Great to have you in studio. Quite an intro for you there from Michelle Obama.
Yeah, I think she's not undecided.
Clearly. So, but let me just ask you just straight up, where do you think this race stands?
I like where we're at. The issues that mean the most to independents in your own poll are immigration, the economy, and inflation. And Biden won independents by 13 in 2020 in your poll. She's up by 1. So I really like where we're at. 61% of the people in the New York Times poll said we're on the wrong track. So that's the number I look at most, Jonathan, is wrong track. If you're an incumbent, and she is, and 60% of the people plus believe the nation's on the wrong track, and Trump is still leading on the issues most important to people in their daily lives, Trump wins.
And she's clearly trying to turn this into a referendum.
About him.
Not a referendum, but a choice.
Yeah.
Who do you want?
Right.
But let me ask you, in terms of Trump's closing arguments, I think I know where you think they should be, but he's been all over the place. You know, there's the enemy within stuff. He was on with Joe Rogan for 3 hours, talking about, among other things, life on Mars. What do you think he needs to do? What should the closing argument be?
Just go back to what people care about the most. People are hurting. Inflation is high. The economy is turned the wrong way. Immigration is broken. Kamala Harris's America is you basically have to mortgage your house to fill up your car. And when you go to the gas station, you're likely to get robbed by an illegal immigrant and your daughter's playing against some guy in volleyball. I mean, that's the America that people don't like. And Michelle Obama's a good person. She's very articulate. But every time the Obamas pick the Democratic nominee, we win. You know, Obama picked Clinton. We beat her. They threw Biden over for Harris. And I think Trump's going to beat Harris simply because she's had a lot of time now to convince people she'll put the country back on the right track, and all the wrong track numbers are holding. When you ask people, who do you trust most to fix the problems you care most about, is Trump, not her.
Well, let me ask you about where Trump is right now. I mean, we had this extraordinary event this week. John Kelly, who, of course,
I heard that.
was his Secretary of Homeland Security, his Chief of Staff, longest-serving Chief of Staff, saying that he's a textbook definition of a fascist, that he wants to be a dictator, and he said a lot more than that.
He has, and he lost his son in Iraq, General Kelly. I know him. I've had a good relationship with him, but he's undermining a concept that's been good for America, I think. Our generals have sort of been apolitical. He's entitled to his opinion. I just categorically reject it. 3 weeks before the election, you're calling basically Trump Hitler, a fascist, is not going to resonate. What happened to joy on the Democratic side? They went from joy to now Trump is Hitler. That's desperation. As to General Kelly, I would say that the state of Israel, Donald Trump is the most popular politician from the West because he stood by the state of Israel. Hitler wanted to kill all the Jews. President Trump has been a friend of Israel unlike any other. So no wars on his watch. The border was secure. Inflation was down. Mortgage rates were below 3% when President Trump was president. Now they've over doubled. I think General Kelly's criticisms are not based on facts. I think it's emotional. It's sad, and it's not going to matter.
But, well, first of all, obviously, Kelly's not alone in saying that. We heard General Milley, who Donald Trump made the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, saying he's fascist to the core. And it's not, so let's put aside the word fascist for a second. Kelly also said that Donald Trump disparaged those American heroes who died for our country as losers.
So here's
and it wasn't, he's not saying he's Hitler, but that he repeatedly said Hitler did good things.
So here's what I would say to America.
I mean, did he make it up? I mean, I'm asking. I mean, you know Kelly. I mean,
President Trump denied that he said that, but let's look at the record rather than the rhetoric. Nobody rebuilt the military stronger than Donald Trump, except maybe Ronald Reagan. I've seen him. Listen, I've had a lot of interaction with him, so I categorically reject the idea that he has anything but admiration for those who serve and sacrifice. I have seen him interact with the military. So this idea he's hostile to those who serve is not borne out. When he was president, America was strong. The military had what they needed. We went after our enemies. People were afraid of America. Since Biden-Harris has been since they've been in charge, everything's gone to crap. It's all broken. We had a secure border. Now it's broken. We had no wars. Now the whole world's on fire. Mortgage rates have doubled. We're on the wrong track. With all due respect to these generals, America is ready to move differently, and Donald Trump is the best hope to put out the fires in the world, to end the war in Ukraine, to bring about peace in the Mideast, to restore a broken border and get the economy humming. He did it once. He can do it again. She had a chance. She failed.
But again, it's not just generals. I mean, it's Kelly, Chief of Staff, Mattis, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Jim Mattis, obviously another four-star, who was chosen to be the Secretary of Defense. This is not a minor position. And he said this of Donald Trump: his use of the presidency to destroy trust in our election and to poison our respect for fellow citizens has been enabled by pseudo-political leaders whose names will live in infamy as profiles in cowardice. Now, General Mattis, Secretary Mattis, is somebody you called a role model for the concept of duty, honor, and country. Can you really dismiss?
Now he's weighed in politically. He has every right to his opinion. But to General Mattis, I think you're rewriting history here because for some reason, I don't know what that reason is, you're not going to be able to change what President Trump did. He killed Soleimani. He put Iran in a box. He put Israel in the strongest position they've been in. He rebuilt our military. Russia didn't invade Ukraine. The border was the most secure in the last 40 years. Inflation was down. Mortgage rates were half of where they are today. He did all of that. He did that. He was a strong leader on the things that matter the most. Whether you like him or not, that's up to you. He's not a fascist. He's not Hitler. And that shows you how desperate this campaign is. You got 3 retired generals who've been out of the game for a while, 3 weeks before the election, trying to replace joy with fear. And let me say one thing to these generals. I admire you. I respect you. But for 20 years, you were given, and others, billions of dollars to train the Iraqi and the Afghan army, and they folded like a cheap suit. How about a little self-reflection about the job you did before you criticize others?
I mean, I could go through all the good things you've said about all 3 of those. Men. And look, Donald Trump.
That was before they weighed in and turned America upside down.
Donald Trump
using rhetoric that's dangerous and is off base. So they decided to do this. You're the ones that want to weigh in. Okay, if you want to call him Hitler.
They didn't call him Hitler.
Well,
what they did is they warned
they're trying to scare Americans that this man can't fix the problems we need fixed. I reject that. I was there, too. I was around him. I don't think he's a fascist. I thought he was a very strong president at a time we needed a strong president. I think he will be a strong president to get this country back on track, to revive our economy, to secure our border, and put out fires. They're telling you they want 4 more years of Kamala Harris and 4 more years of the same policy. To these generals, you're trying to tell America that things are good now, they're terrible now. And if she's elected based on your advice, everything goes to hell at home and abroad. So reject their advice.
Now you have been very critical of the generals, 2 of them using the word fascist. Mitch McConnell and Secretary and Speaker Johnson have been very critical, saying this is inciting violence. How dare you call Donald Trump a fascist? Let me just play you a little bit about what Donald Trump has had to say about Kamala Harris.
The true divide in American politics today is between these far-left fascists, led by Harris and her group. We have a fascist person running who's incompetent. She's a Marxist, communist, fascist, socialist. She's not actually a socialist. She's gone past that. Somebody's got to explain this woman. There's a radical left Marxist, communist, fascist.
So why don't you ask me, do I think Kamala Harris is a fascist? No. Do I think she's a communist? No. I think she's the most liberal person to ever be nominated by a major party. I think she's ineffective. I think she's incompetent. She's had a chance to be the border czar and failed miserably. On her watch, she advised President Biden it was a good thing to get out of Afghanistan. She has been antagonistic to giving Ukraine and Israel the military
But we
weapons
can acknowledge that when it comes to the insults, they come
I
just
guess,
as strong, maybe stronger.
But you're not. You're not.
We're out of time.
You're not having Lindsey Graham call her a fascist. She's just incompetent and incapable and would be a lousy president.
Thank you, Senator Graham. Coming up,
Thank you.
I sit down with billionaire entrepreneur. Is she going to win?
I think so, for sure. I mean, when you go to one of her campaigns, she is just a dynamic speaker. I mean, the crowd is engaged. The energy is off the charts. I mean, if that's any indication, she's going to win easily.
So I've heard you say a couple times that she's not a good salesperson.
Right.
Isn't that important, not just in a campaign, but in being president?
Well, there's different types of salespeople, right? There are salespeople with lousy products that have to oversell. That's Donald Trump. Then there's other salespeople who may not be as boisterous and relentless, but know that they have a great product, so they don't have to be boisterous and relentless. That's Kamala Harris.
Now, Trump has a basic message which he gives, and it's not all based on facts, to say the least. But the basic thing is, the economy was great when I was president. It's a total disaster ever since, Biden took over. I'm going to make it great again. What do you say to people who are saying, look?
You can use whatever metric you want. The economy's in great shape. That does not mean every single individual in this country is experiencing all the goodness of the economy, but that was the same under the Trump administration as well. The stock market's at record high, the GDP's at record high, real wages are greater than inflation now. Inflation is back down, in the 2.5–3% range variably. Jobs are still, we're getting an incredible jobs report. This goes back to the salesmanship, and this applies to Joe Biden. I'm not going to throw Joe on the bus, but he's not a great salesperson. Donald Trump is saying this stuff that's not true, and the old saying, you repeat a lie enough, people will start believing you.
Now, you're not a Democrat.
No.
You're not a Republican.
No. I think for myself.
So, you voted for Nikki Haley in the Republican primary.
Yeah.
Would you be supporting her right now if she was the Republican nominee?
Not against Kamala, against Biden, maybe.
And what do you make of Kamala? Now, you've spent time with her.
Sure.
You've gotten to know her more. You've been out there with her.
Yeah.
What's your sense of her? Like, what kind of president would she be?
I think she'd be great because she's open-minded. She's not an ideologue. She's not dogmatic. She wants to get input from everybody. I haven't given her a penny. People think, oh, you're giving her a lot of money. No, I haven't given a penny.
Why haven't you?
I haven't given a penny to a candidate since 2002. Yeah, and it was just like, my attitude is, if I have a good idea and if I feel passionate about the candidate, I'll help. I don't want them to work with me because I paid them to work with me.
What did you think of Harris when she was running for president the first time around, 2019?
I think I wasn't paying attention. Yeah. But look, But
you know the position she took. She was a Medicare for all. It was a Green New Deal.
But she was representing the state of California. You can call it the People's Republic of California, right? And so when you have a far left state, you're gonna do what those your citizens want. When you're representing the United States of America, it's a much broader and
But she took those positions when she was starting to run for president.
I get that. I get that. But here's where we are now. That was not a very long-lived run, and I think she learned the hard way that certain.
Do you think she believed that stuff, or was she doing it to run?
I think she believed it for sure. But I mean, look, she has to speak for herself on those things. What I do like about her is she continuously says she's open-minded, and she's proved it. I've changed a lot of my positions in the past 5 years. Donald Trump has changed his. I think a lot of reasonable people have changed theirs. And, to say this was your position for Medicare for all, this was your position on whatever it may be, and to be shocked that somebody changed their mind, it's a bigger shock that someone's shocked.
Has she done a good enough job explaining to people why she's changed her mind on the border, for instance? I mean, has she done a good enough job?
There's two elements there. One, she's only been running for 13 weeks. And when she started to run, when she replaced Joe Biden, she had a deficit in awareness. Even Donald Trump would say, I don't even know who Harris is. You guys know who Harris is? And she had negative favorables. And so she had to spend what is the last 13 weeks, just letting people get to know her and, you know, getting to see that she is vibrant, she is smart, she is open-minded. And so when you're trying to win that battle, you're not going to answer all the specifics of every, you know, have the opportunity to answer all the specifics. And the proof is in the pudding. She went from, as I said, negatives and, you know, being right where Joe Biden is, and in 13 weeks, they're in a dead heat and it's a toss-up.
Well, that's one way to look at it. Another way to look at it is that look at the incoming that Trump has had. I mean, he's got his former chief of staff saying that he's a fascist, that he admired Hitler, that he called American heroes suckers and losers because they died in battle for America, and the race is still tied.
Yeah. Well, I mean, 13 weeks. You know, again, in 13 weeks, how far can anybody go? She's done an amazing thing that I think will be written favorably about in the history books. To go from nowhere, you know, from the outhouse to the penthouse, that's not easy.
Now, she's called Trump a fascist now, too. What do you make of that?
I mean, it's, you know, it's not far from him calling her a communist.
Well, he's actually called her a fascist, too. He's called her all the names.
And a fascist, too, right?
Yeah,
so,
everything.
I mean, the name calling, you know, in a normal world, the two parties would get together and say, let's just stop this name calling, right? Let's just focus on the issues. But this is not a normal world. Donald Trump is not a normal candidate. And I think it's not a stretch to call Donald Trump a fascist. You talked about the people in his cabinet that spoke the same way. You know, he's talking about the enemy within and going after people using the military. He's talked about mass deportations where, you know, they'll stop people on the street and check their papers. What does that remind you of? Talking about, you know, knocking on doors and pulling people out and deporting them. What does that remind you of? That's pretty damn close to fascism, if not the definition of fascism.
So at the risk of going full Shark Tank, I want to show you
Fire away. Friday nights on ABC.
Something that Kevin O'Leary said just the other about this.
The Jan 6 deal has been in the market forever. This rhetoric from people saying Trump is a Nazi and a fascist in the market forever. Do you really want to spend your closing statements on old stuff that's already needled into 45% of the country that hates them?
You know, that's like, I'm sorry, Mrs. Lincoln, you know, but let's not talk about that. Let's talk about the play. This is not new. You know, is it unnerving to a certain extent that, you know, half of America continues to support him? Yes. Is there a reason? In my mind, it's leadership. If you don't have strong leadership, and, you know, Joe Biden did a lot of great things. I think, you know, the economy and many other things that, you know, the CHIPS Act, there's so many great things he's done, but a leader he's not. And he's effective, and I think Kamala is a leader.
But you do hear from a lot of serious people that, look, I don't like the rhetoric, I don't like the stuff he says, but I think he'll take the country in a better direction on the economy or whatever.
But then you ask them for the details.
Policies.
You ask them for the details. There are none. And that's one of the reasons I'm a surrogate, because I can go into the nitty-gritty of any business topic you want to talk about. And I can tell you the difference between Kamala Harris's plan and whatever evidentiary things we have from Donald Trump.
I want to ask you about what Trump has said a lot about you, but can I just read one of his posts just get you? He says, Mark Cuban is a loser, wouldn't take his phone calls anymore at the White House, and he went rogue, a weak and pathetic bully. He's got nothing going. So that's what Trump has to say.
Well, you left out the best part.
Oh, I did? Oh, really low club speed, a total non-athlete.
I can outdrive him all day, any day. So what? I don't care. You know, we have this give and take. When that's who he is. He's very transactional.
There was a nanosecond where you thought it was a good thing that he got involved in politics. When he was running for president.
Yeah, when he first ran, I didn't think he had a chance to win, but I'm like, this is great. You know, he's not a traditional politician, and I thought that would be a net positive. I was wrong.
Did you? I know you briefly looked at running in 2020.
Yeah,
2020.
Yeah.
And what about this time? I mean, there was talk about you. No chance at all.
No chance. I have no interest. I have no interest in being a politician of any type. I have no interest in serving in the cabinet for Kamala Harris or anybody. I like being a disruptor as an entrepreneur.
And finally, in the presidential race, you have a situation where both sides are saying that if the other side wins, it's basically the end.
Armageddon, yeah.
I mean, it's like the worst possible thing. Trump says we won't have a country anymore. Kamala Harris suggests we won't have American democracy anymore. What do you make of that?
I mean, hyperbole is nothing new.
But it's more this year, isn't it? I mean,
I mean, you know, you hear the stories about people saying, I'll leave the country and all that.
Yeah.
Trump wins. I mean, I'm not going anywhere, but I'm an American first. I'll do whatever I can to help this country wherever I can. And it doesn't matter to me who's president. But
it's not the end of democracy.
I hope not. Do I think that Donald Trump has fascist tendencies? Absolutely, positively. I do believe Donald Trump poses a threat. I'm not going to say it's 100%, but I think it's a greater than 0%. And to me, I mean, just look at January 6th. Just look, I mean, literally, if anybody here that works for you, if someone was chanting outside, hang Mark Cuban, you all would rally around me and try, let's figure this out. To have somebody who's second in command and they're chanting, hang Mike Pence, and you don't care, there's nothing you won't do.
But with all that, are Democrats going to accept the results?
Yes.
If Donald Trump wins?
Yes.
Even all that you just said?
Yes.
And what it means?
Yes. Now, they'll go to work, and try to make sure our institutions remain solid. But I think this all resides with Donald Trump. Maybe he has a few acolytes that he'll hire that will support him in some of these crazy things like he did before, with fewer adults in the room this time. But I do think those people around him will try to support our own our long-term institutions. But I can't say with 100% certainty that he won't overcome that and do something that really sets us back. I mean, we went.
Whether I'm in the airport or at the train station or just tracking through, they say, how do you feel? I say, have you voted? There's 65 million Americans with their ballots right now. Turn those ballots in. So how do I feel? I feel like we're fighting. I feel like the campaign has a real serious operation to track those who need to turn in their ballots. And I also believe that in the closing 9 days, the vice president has to be strong. Forget talking about Donald Trump. Talk about what she's going to do to help the middle class, help the poor, help those who are working every day of their lives, and go out there and turn out this vote.
But her closing argument is about Trump. I mean, largely, it's Trump as a threat to American democracy. Called him a fascist. I mean, it does seem to me that she's closing in on this Trump is a threat closing argument.
No, I think she's also closing in on, I'm going to lower your costs. I'm going to protect your freedom. I'm going to be the champion for the middle class. I think she can close on all four notes and sound like she understands how to lead the United States of America. And yes, she's competent, she's smart, and she has a tremendous gift, I think, of closing this deal with the American people.
Chris, it's really something to see the race so close. If anything, Trump maybe with a slight lead here at this moment, even with all that we've seen. John Kelly coming out, saying he praised Hitler, he called American heroes suckers and losers, that he's a textbook definition of a fascist. What'd you make of how Lindsey Graham defended him on that?
Well, you want to talk about textbook hypocrite. I mean, that's Lindsey. And let me just use his own words from the night of January 6th. He said, count me out. I've never been more humiliated and embarrassed for my country than with this president. Now, look, you can agree with Donald Trump on certain issues. I do. But if you believe that fundamentally he is an embarrassment and a humiliation to this country, how the hell did Lindsey Graham sit in that chair and look in that camera and say the things he said about Donald Trump this morning? This is why people hate politics, John, because they know that what Lindsey Graham said on the night, January 6th, is what Lindsey Graham really believes. And by the way, you know it, and so does Donna. We on the inside know that's what he really thinks, yet he gets on this show and on that camera and gives a whole nother story. Well, I listened to him that night. I was watching that night. And I know Lindsey Graham, and I knew Lindsey Graham when he was a friend of John McCain.
So this is far beyond. This is far beyond Lindsey Graham. I mean, we saw some amazing quotes from Mitch McConnell this week.
He's just emblematic.
Saying so. I mean, so you have a lot of these people, and McConnell's answer to the criticism he had given of Trump, which is harsher than what you just read from Lindsey Graham, is it pales in comparison to what J.D. Vance said about him. So this is across the board.
Well, look, it's emblematic of what Donald Trump has imposed upon these folks and what they've been willing to accept. I mean, the fact is they're scared. Lindsey Graham this morning, when you see a guy like Lindsey, who's been around for a long time, John, going back 30 years now, he's been in Washington, D.C., and when you see him yelling like he was yelling this morning, that's a guy who's scared. He's putting on a show for the one-man show in Mar-a-Lago or Bedminster, wherever he is this morning, watching this stuff. And real American people understand that if that's what you said on the night of January 6th, that's what's in your heart and what you believe. And look, in the end, when you talk about what this election is all about, I slightly disagree with Donna on this. I don't think the vice president should be closing on Donald Trump. Let her surrogates do it. Her surrogates want to talk about that stuff. She needs to close the deal with disaffected Republicans and with independents. And the way to close the deal is look in the camera and say what you're going to do for the country.
I agree. Look, you're not disagreeing with me. You're saying the same thing I'm saying. I'm saying don't waste all your time talking about Donald Trump. We know who Donald Trump is. The country knows. The world knows who Donald Trump. You need to talk to the voters that you can reach. The independents, the soft Republicans. You call them disaffected soft. I call them Americans. I call Democrats who are not excited yet. They're Americans. Go and get them. Go find them. Go reach them. Do not think for 1 minute that $1 billion spent between all of these campaigns and all these ads will get the people out that you need on election night. That's the ball game, and that's what the Harris campaign is doing.
She faces a fundamental problem, though, isn't it, that most of the country thinks the country is heading in the wrong direction. The kind of numbers that you would see when an incumbent gets voted out. And she's not literally the incumbent, but she's the incumbent vice president.
Look, the reason why we keep using the word joy, and I hope we continue to put that word out there, because there is some joy in caring about your country and loving your country and wanting to do better for your country. And there's no question that since 2004, American people have been in a sour mood. That's why over the last 10 elections, they've been close. And I'm not just talking about presidential, I'm talking about House and Senate. We keep changing horses, thinking that that's going to get us to a better happy point. But look, I think the vice president has an opportunity over the next 9 days to really hone in on what troubles the American spirit right now. And yes, that is the fate of our democracy, but more importantly, it's how people feel about their own lives. If you can bring those Americans from the outskirts of hope and give them a path to freedom and dignity and opportunity, she'll win this election.
Let me ask you a tough question, Governor. You've said what you said about Donald Trump. I mean, it's as harsh a critique as anybody. But you haven't gone the next step to say that you would vote for Kamala Harris. I mean, if you really think that Trump is what you think he is, then how come you're not supporting the person running against him?
Because she's got to close the deal with me.
And could she still close it?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure she could. I got another 9 days. I'm not voting until Election Day. I'm not one of these early voting guys. I'm a dinosaur. I'm going to go walk up to my
So you might end up voting for Kamala Harris.
I could, but I won't vote for Donald Trump. I could vote for her, but she hasn't closed the deal with me, John. And look, here's the contrast that she needs to draw. Donald Trump, this week, called our country a garbage pail.
Oh, yeah.
A garbage pail. He said, we have become a garbage pail.
As he comes in, I'm proud to be an American.
That's right. If you're an American who doesn't believe that about your country, how do you vote for a guy who does? Now, what she needs to do is to directly answer the immigration question. Answer it. You know what? They fumbled it at the beginning. Now, she says that she wants to get tougher, stronger, better on it. She wants more border agents, all the rest of it. And she couldn't answer the question on the wall the other night. I don't think she wants the wall. I don't think she's ever wanted the wall. But here's what you do when you're a leader, a governor or a president. If that's what you have to do to get the job done, I'll give them the wall to get the other stuff in that bill that I want.
All right, Donna, I know you've got a thought on that, but we are out of time. We will pick it up next week. Thank you very much. Chris Christie, Donna Brazile. Coming up, I traveled to Omaha to speak with the surprising Nebraska candidate who could decide control of the Senate. It's a conversation you won't want to miss.
bạn lưu ý sau khi kết hàng và lên hàng tiếp theo, các bạn sẽ lên cho mình 2 mũi bính, sau đó mới móc mũi kép đơn. Ở đây mình đã móc xong hàng thứ 3 này. Các bạn có thể thấy rõ phần đáy túi. Chúng ta sẽ tiếp tục móc lên đến hàng thứ 12.